and it's 5. So
So why don't we wait just like 1 minute, Walter? I don't think we want to jump the gun. We want people to be kind of properly introduced. So
all right.
does that sound good to everybody, to just wait maybe 1 more minute while people kind of get here? Okay, cool.
Yes.
So, but for everybody, our plan is I'll introduce myself. I'll introduce Dean. Dean will say hi and welcome to this event, and then we'll begin with the Area 4 candidates, and it'll be the questioning will be run by Jason as the president of the CRC union. Everybody got the plan?
The order of questions is Linda, me, and then Gabrielle, correct?
Yeah. Okay.
As they appear.
501. Okay, Linda?
I will defer to others. Want to start when you like.
All right, let's go for it. As I say in my classes, we can't end until we start. And so everybody, welcome. My name is Walter Kawamoto. I teach sociology at American River College, and I'm the chair of the Political Action and Fund Committee of the Los Rios College Federation of Teachers. We are the union that represents the faculty of Los Rios Community College District. And this is an exciting event. Not only is it our first time doing a public Zoom event, but it's also our first time hosting a candidates forum. We, in the past, whenever our union PAC has considered endorsing candidates, we would bring them into a private meeting. We're doing that. We're trying different variations. We're doing that for the Area 3 Los Rios trustee races, but we're trying this public forum for the Area 4 and Area 7 races. And we're going to be having a short PAC meeting after this forum, hopefully to decide who we endorse. We don't have to endorse after this meeting. We could still like table it and defer if we choose, but hopefully we're going to make our decision tonight. And so with that, before we begin, I would like to also introduce the president of the Los Rios College Federation of Teachers for a few words. Dean Murakami, please say hi.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for being here for this event. I really appreciate the time that you've committed to this, to make this very important decision that we have for us in Los Rios. We take very great pride in our district and our board of trustees. So this is a very serious decision that we'll be making here today. So thank you for being here, and we really appreciate your time to consider yourself as running for a board of trustees. Thank you very much.
And now as we transfer to Jason Newman, president of the CRC union, I do want to encourage to remind everybody that the chat function in this case is just to send to our PAC secretary any questions you might have if we have time from the audience. But you can rename yourself by letting us know a little bit about who you are. Maybe if you're a member of the Los Rios executive board, letting the people know what your office is, or if you're not, but if you're a member of the audience, what your college is that you're from, or some other descriptor, or the candidates can mention a little what their race they're running for, something like that, or maybe have a link to their website in the naming. I don't even know how much you can put in that name function. But now go ahead, take it, Jason.
Thank you, Walter. Tonight, faculty from Cosumnes River College will ask questions of trustee candidates running in the November election for areas 4 and 7 in the Los Rios Community College District. Our interview questions were provided by faculty on the PAC committee. We also encourage the audience to participate with questions, time permitting. We ask that you mute your microphone unless you are speaking during the audience part of the forum. If you have a question for the candidates, please post it in the chat for the host to see. Thank you. This event is being recorded tonight. Area 4 interviews will last until approximately 5:40 p.m. Area 7 interviews will begin immediately afterwards. The two candidates interviewing for Area 4 are David Sandino and Kelly Wilkerson. Los Rios Area 4 covers the southern part of the city of Sacramento and Sacramento County, including the Valley High area, Laguna, Clarksburg, and the western part of Yolo County, including West Sacramento. The two candidates interviewing for Area 7 tonight are incumbent Tammy Nelson and Scott Schmidt. Katie Villegas, the third candidate running for Area 7, has chosen not to seek the union's endorsement. Los Rios Area 7 covers the southwestern part of Sacramento County, including Florin, Elk Grove, Slough House, and part of Rancho Cordova. Following the interviews, our PAC will reconvene privately and vote on potential endorsement of the candidates. We ask tonight that our candidates limit their response time to 2 to 3 minutes per question. And we'll begin with candidate introductions for Area 4. And we would like David Sandino to begin with an introduction. Thank you.
Well, thank you everyone for giving me a chance to meet you and tell you a little bit about myself. I did send out my information, a packet to you, so hope you had a chance to read that, but I'll summarize. I'm an attorney and a longtime public servant. I've been working for the state of California for 30 years as a water lawyer, environmental lawyer. Also, I served as chief counsel management of the legal office for 4 years. So I've had a long public service career, and I think that gives me a good background understanding how community colleges function just from a financial standpoint and a governance standpoint. But I've also had another career where I've served in academia. This has been my passion, teaching as an adjunct, but I also taught for 2 years in a tenure track position at Texas Tech. I love teaching. I understand the issues relating to teaching, and that was something that ultimately drew me to this position. So I'm seeking this position because of my public service heart. I saw this position open a few months ago, and I thought I'd give it a try to apply for it. I'm active in the Davis community. I have served on 5 different city commissions in Davis, including at one time on the Planning Commission, Natural Resources Commission, and I currently serve on the Budget and Finance Commission. So I've been an active member within the city of Davis. Another thing that I've accomplished that I wish to share with you, I was selected as a Fulbright Fellow. I believe I've been told I was the first non-academic state employee to select for that position like that. I had the opportunity to teach in Russia for a semester. And I'm an active member of the Fulbright Foundation, which purpose is to encourage international understanding. So that's basically my professional background. I want to emphasize that I think if I had the opportunity to serve in this position, I'd be diligent. I would read all the different agenda packets. I'm a good listener. I'm a collaborator. And I believe this is a good fit for my public service desires. So I hope that gives you an idea where I'm coming from.
Thank you, David. Kelly.
Yeah, well, first of all, I just want to start out by saying thank you to each of you for the heroic job you've done over the past 5 months. I don't think the rest of our community fully appreciates what you've done. You know, switching to a different modality, rewriting your curriculum, connecting with students virtually, all from home, and for many of you with new home responsibilities. And you did it because you know that your work is essential in every way. You did it because you know that the road to social, economic, and racial justice runs through our campuses. and you just couldn't bear to put up one more roadblock for our students. I'm running for trustee in Area 4 because I share the same commitment to students. I'm a high school teacher, teaching both English and a career tech classes. I'm a high school teacher. I know that one size doesn't fit all for our students. I built a nationally recognized journalism program, so I know that excellence doesn't just happen. It's a result of the alchemy that happens as a result of hundreds of hours in the classroom mixed with students let loose to create work that matters. I'm also running because I believe I have the right combination of skills and experience to lead Los Rios through this time of incredible economic and educational disruption. Before becoming a teacher, I worked for 3 community college faculty groups for nearly a decade. I worked with Marty Hittleman, NCFT's Community College Council. A few of you might remember Marty. My job was to take challenging, confusing information, ask questions until I fully understood it, and then communicate in a clear way to faculty. I plan to do the same if I am trustee. I plan to always be honest with you about the challenges and seek ideas from you about ways to surmount them. Our most urgent problem right now is stabilizing our funding. I plan to use my advocacy skills to join the call to switch to per student funding instead of funding based on FTE during this unprecedented time. My first priority will be maintaining current staffing levels, prioritizing funding for the classroom and student services above all else. Our communities and our students are also turning to us with an urgent call to respond to racial injustice, and I'm ready to join you in answering that call. Our ethnic studies programs need full-time faculty so they can expand and thrive. The faculty in our administration of justice programs need to be given free rein to change the curriculum. We need to reach into our area high schools to offer seamless support, especially for our students of color. And we need to provide more resources to our prison and reentry programs to do our part to right the wrongs of mass incarceration. Over the past half year, I've talked with more than 50 faculty members and staff. I think about half of the people that are on this call, in addition to many others. And over again, you've told me about your deep concern for and commitment to students. As a trustee, I can promise you that I will keep listening. I am not done learning from you. My phone number and my emails are public, and someday soon, I hope we can meet face to face.
Thank you, Kelly. Linda will ask the first question of you.
Hi, I'm Linda Sneed. I teach at Cosumnes River College. And the first question is, what is your position on the importance of achieving equity among faculty?
Equity.
Equity, key phrase is equity among faculty.
Equity.
Is it for me first? Or David?
Yeah, you're Kelly, sorry.
Right, and then we're going to alternate the order of answers with the next 2 questions.
Okay, well, when I think of equity, I think of lots of different areas of equity. I think of the inequity between full-time and part-time faculty. And our ongoing struggle, you know, from back when I was working with community college organizations, we still have not moved the needle much on increasing the number of full-time faculty. And that to me is a concern in 2 directions. One is that I don't think that it's best for students for continuity of instruction. And, you know, I don't think it's good for our colleges because of shared governance. Because not having a part-time faculty have the time to fully engage in shared governance. And even more importantly, I just don't think it's right and I know that you agree that it's not right to have so many dedicated faculty spend years and years in this profession and not receive the compensation that they deserve and that they've earned. I also think about equity in terms of diversifying our faculty staff. And I know that we have made strides, but we don't have, our faculty does not look like our student body. Certainly doesn't look like that at my own high school, doesn't look like that at our colleges. And I think if there's anything that has not been, certainly been reinforced in the last, 6 months, is how important it is for our students to see themselves represented at all levels, to see someone who looks like them, at least once during their college career. And we have strides to make in that, both in terms of our faculty and in our administration. And then the last thing I think with the equity is, equity amongst our campuses and centers. And I think that one way that we can make sure that we have funding across all campuses and centers is by, especially now that online education is growing, whether we like it or not, by, moving some of those online classes, even in the future when we're back in person instruction, to make sure that every center and every college, every campus has adequate funding in that way.
Thank you. Same question to Sandino.
Well, thank you. The term equity is a broad term, and for me, it connotes fairness. So when I think of equity, I'm thinking of the faculty in terms of salary equity and benefit equity. Is the faculty members receiving an equitable salary for the kind of hard work they do teaching our students? And I think everybody on this call understands that faculty are always working for equity. The kind of work that they're doing is not fully appreciated yet by society. So this is always something that we have to work for and pay attention to. And that's something that I'm cognizant of, and would certainly be something that I would work for if I were on the board. Another equity that I think is important is equity in terms of actual course assignments, teaching loads. What's a fair distribution of teaching loads for instructors? I've experienced this teaching in colleges. If things aren't managed equitably, that causes stress among the faculty and unpleasantness. So I'm definitely something to look at, what would be an appropriate teaching load for faculty members. Another part of equity that I think is important, and Kelly mentioned it, is this relationship between our full-time faculty and an adjunct. I've more or less have seen life from both sides. I've been a full-time faculty and I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I'm an adjunct now and I thoroughly enjoy that. But it's important that for the adjuncts that aren't there full-time, that they have the opportunity to participate as much as possible, I believe, in faculty governance and other things that are occurring in the school. And for my adjunct position at Santa Clara, I've been active in that as an adjunct. I'm an attorney. I like digging into these kind of complex issues, but trying to make sure that the school doesn't forget about the adjuncts who aren't as campus as much, but are so vital to the education of the school. Another thing that I think about in terms of equity and fairness is, what is the culture? What is the relationship of the school within the faculty, the administrative staff, the administration, and the board? Okay, I very much believe strongly in a collaborative, open, transparent relationship working together. One that allows equity, one that allows for fair treatment of everyone, faculty, staff, etc. So I talk about those things and I raise it. Sometimes these are difficult questions, but that I think is important to put on the table. Another aspect of equity I see with this dynamic Los Rios system is the relationship among the 4 colleges, but also the satellite campuses. I don't know enough about all how the funds are allocated among the colleges. I would become expert on that. But I'm hoping it can be done in a collaborative way and things are fairly distributed and there's not competition in a way that creates unpleasantness. So I think that's a big part of equity. And then finally, our service to our students and encouraging students from diverse backgrounds to have the opportunity to participate in a community college like I did, which I think was vital to my career, and having a chance to enter the profession I did was because of community college teaching that I received when I was in Merced. So I think that kind of equity spreading out the benefits of community college education to citizens in our area is vitally important. Thank you.
Thank you, David. I'll ask the second question of both candidates, beginning with Kelly Wilkerson. And here's the question. What is your philosophy and experience in working with collective bargaining groups, particularly in higher education?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, I worked for about 6 years with CFT's Community College Council at the statewide level. And I spent, it was actually both illuminating and inspiring. I wrote the statewide newsletter and did the graphic design for it. And so I traveled throughout California, visiting different campuses, highlighting kind of the very diverse and unique aspects of different campuses. I definitely remember traveling to Susanville and visiting their gunsmithing program, for example. You know, not something we have in Los Rios. And that was one part of my job, doing kind of those features where I'm learning really about the colleges and the everyday work that you do. But the other part was taking, you know, challenging, complex issues like the state budget, like our funding mechanisms, and as a layperson, diving in, really asking all of the, you know, dumb questions that we tell our students that's not dumb to ask, and making sure that I fully understood that, and then, you know, sharing that with faculty so that they also would understand. So that's my experience in higher ed. I am a member of my union, the Davis Teachers Association. I've been a member ever since I became a teacher, and I spent 1 year on their negotiating team, meeting with district staff, you know, in a challenging budget time. And again, having the job of communicating that information back to our teachers so that they could fully understand. And so, you know, that's my experience with bargaining units in education.
Thank you, Kelly. We'll move to the next question now from Gabriel Torres.
I didn't get a chance to address it. Are you moving?
Oh, I apologize. Yeah, David, please. What is your philosophy and experience in working with collective bargaining groups, particularly in higher education?
Well, let me start it this way. I'll start with bargaining groups in general and my background with those, and then I'll move into education. So 30 years as a public employee for the state of California. I've been a member of the bargaining unit that I'm still a member today. And I've also, when I was in management, I was not a member of the bargaining unit. I was outside of that. I have a good, I think, understanding of the benefits that California provides to have these kinds of mechanisms to protect public employees. And I'm very supportive of that. I think you need this kind of give and take between the administration and representation by the folks that are protected by the bargaining unit. And I think that's the best way to achieve what we talked about in the last question, or trying to achieve equity in salary and benefits. I mean, we would love, I'm sure, to have a simpler process, but I think this is actually a good process. I've worked with bargaining units as the one I'm in now case, the California Attorney Bargaining Unit, but I've also negotiated a little bit on the other side when we had conflicts when I was on the management team. So it gives me insights as to how this process works. As far as my experience in educational bargaining units, long time ago, before I became attorney, I was a high school teacher and I taught science and math and basketball coach. So I familiarized myself with the Teachers Association at the time and the benefits that that association provided. We were engaged in trying to improve salaries. Since then, once I started my college teaching career, I have seen now life from both sides. I've seen how bargaining units can help faculty. I've also been in an environment when I taught in Texas where they're unrepresented. And the faculty have a lot less say in terms of outcome. I enjoyed teaching there. I don't want you to take that wrong. I enjoyed teaching in Texas, but they don't have that kind of faculty representation. So my thought is for faculty bargaining units, they're vital, they're important. If I were a board member, I would have a fiduciary duty to protect the entire district. As I understand the organization chart for the school district, there's only one person that the board supervises, and that is the chancellor. And all these other important stakeholders and members of the academic, of the Los Rios community, those issues flow through him, and he helps us, guide us to help and assist. So when it comes to that position, I would listen closely to the administration because that's where you get the information. But of course, I'd want to reach out and have other sources of information like the faculty. And if I could be a positive influencer on cooperative collegial relationships between administration and the faculty, I would encourage that. I know there are some school districts where that doesn't happen, where you have conflicts between board, administration, faculty. I don't think that's good for the schools. I don't think it's healthy. And I would try to actually be a peacemaker and see if we can find some compromise that everybody can live with.
Thank you, David. Gabriel Torres will ask the third question, beginning with Kelly Wilkers.
Yeah, thank you, David, and thank you, Kelly. And this is the question: what do you see as necessary to address and remedy student achievement gaps in Los Rios? And let me preface, let me just say that we've heard about, increasing the diversity of our faculty, diversifying our curriculum. What other things do you see as necessary to address this issue, which has surfaced even more now during the past 6 months?
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of different ways to tackle it, as you well know. And one of the things that I'm very interested in is reaching into into our high schools and making a more seamless transition for our students, especially those students that we know struggle or are sometimes underrepresented in our colleges. I'm especially interested in dual enrollment programs when finances permit it. I know that that's challenging right now. And I feel like there is great opportunity, especially with our ethnic studies faculty, to provide some dual enrollment classes that are not currently offered in our K-12 classes, and have that kind of rich, culturally relevant, motivating curriculum that makes students want to make the transition to our community colleges. And then, of course, once they're in our colleges, we have a wonderful array of support programs. I was talking with the EOPS coordinator at Cosumnes River, and her Herculean efforts to contact every single student in the program and also in the foster youth program, you know, were so inspiring and so above and beyond what is required. But I know that that's not just student services. I know that faculty feel that deep sense of personal responsibility to make all of our students, and especially those students who have not always felt comfortable in higher education, make them feel comfortable in your classrooms. And one of the things that I'm concerned about is both with ethnic studies faculty and also with our student services, we sometimes are relying on a lot of part-time staff or part-time faculty. And I think that that gets in the way of those programs growing and thriving. And I would like to see more of an emphasis. I think where we put full-time staff and where we put full-time faculty shows what our priorities are. And I think if our priorities are more culturally relevant curriculum, more support services for all students, then that's where we need to see our funding and our full-time staffing going.
Thank you, Kelly. David, what do you see as necessary to address and remedy student achievement gaps in Los Rios?
In preparation for tonight's forum, I did review as much as I could about Cosumnes College, Los Rios in general, and achievement measurements and how that's reported by the schools. So I'll start with what I read as someone who's not on campus right now. And I see a lot of successes. So, but I do see that there's probably opportunity for improvement, and hence the question on the achievement gap. So I want to answer this question as a prospective board member. A lot of the discussion we could have relating to how to deal with achievement, and I will talk a little bit about that, focuses on programs and focuses on the faculty and outreach to the feeder schools. All that is important, and a board can be supportive of that, and that would be my goal. And my principle would be that if somebody has a good idea on how to address achievement issues with the diverse population that we have at our colleges, I would be supportive of that as a board member. I would do what I could, bring my skill set to try to make that happen and try to persuade other board members to facilitate that too. Now, some of these problems are outside, or some of these achievement gap issues are outside of the school itself. There's issues with now in this pandemic that we have students I know that are going to be worried about paying rents when the rent moratorium ends in February. We have students that struggle with homelessness. We have students that struggle with hunger. All of these contribute to achievement gap issues, and we shouldn't lose sight of that. And as a board member, I would value those kinds of efforts to make improvements in those areas. So I would approach this issue as a board member, looking for good solutions wherever they came from. If they came from the chancellor, I encourage that. If it came from the faculty, I would encourage that. If it came from the students, I'm there too. If it came from the legislature, I'd do my best to implement it. As far as now some specific things getting down beyond just board ideas and my functioning as a board member, absolutely we need outreach as much as possible to our students, our high schools, to let them know about these wonderful institutions that we have here in this area. This is the jewel of California community college system, in my opinion. And I was, as I said, I was a direct beneficiary of it. It changed my life. I'm the first person in my family to go to college, and that's because of the community college that we had in Merced. And my family still lives in Merced, and my parents do, and I go down to visit them frequently. And I enjoy going by that campus because it warms my heart, because I know what it's done for that community. Well, it's the same way for this area. And all of my colleagues, for instance, working for the state, frequently I ask them what's their career path, and many of them have gone to community colleges. So that would be my focus. We need to sing the praises. We need to outreach. We need to reach out to all groups of students and let them know that we have something here that can better their lives.
Thank you, David and Kelly. We'd like to open up questions now to the audience. If anyone would like to ask a question of both candidates, please speak up.
Hi, this is Kalinda Jones. Can I ask a question now, Jason?
Great, thank you.
All right. So in my observation of the board meetings, it looks as if the board is not all currently on the same page. And it looks as if some of the members hold more power than others. And I'm wondering how comfortable you are at being divergent with the power structure that may be currently present on the board.
Should I take that one first, to be fair?
Sure.
Sure.
Okay. Okay, well, I've spent my career as an attorney giving advice that many times my management team doesn't want to hear. That's my duty as attorney. I'm representing the government. I give advice on many of the issues that overlap with community college. Public Records Act, personnel issues, Brown Act, all these different things are within my portfolio to give advice. And sometimes folks aren't receptive to that. But that's my duty as an attorney to give that advice and to give it honestly. That's my ethical responsibility. And I would see that as a board member as well. I mentioned that as a board member, you have a fiduciary responsibility. It's called a trust position for a reason. You serve as a trustee for the public that benefits from the community college. And that's a broad responsibility. And I would take that seriously. And if that would mean that at times I wouldn't be on the same page as a board member, other board members, I'm not looking for those opportunities, but if that were the case, I hope we could engage in a civil discourse on the board and talk through those issues. And I'm quite happy to express my opinion. I've told folks this time and time again. I've served on boards, like I said, 5 different boards for the city of Davis. Plus I've been an attorney at a variety of different public boards. That I'm not the font of all wisdom, not even close. I want to hear other ideas. And I want to try to discuss those things, these differences in a way so we can come to resolution. And I also recognize when you're on the board, you can't have it your way every time. That's not good board decorum. You have to compromise. You have to discuss. So yes, I've seen 4 of the board meetings. Once I decided I wanted to take a shot at this position, I got engaged. By the way, I tried to be on this board about 12 years ago. I didn't run for the position, but the position was vacant, just like it is now. And I applied for it. There were 30 applicants. I came in 3rd. I was happy for the chance to participate. But back to I kind of digress a little bit, but back to sitting on the board, I will be a person that is willing to speak truth to power and attempt to seek collaboration and cooperation as much as possible, but when we can't, I'll vote my conscience.
Thank you. Same question to Kelly.
Yeah, you know, I've been listening in all this year to board meetings. I haven't actually seen a lot of divergent views. What I have seen is some board members more active and more dominant than others. I have also been surprised by very, very short meetings where decisions are made very quickly, not a lot of public comment. The public comment typically comes from CFT and Academic Senate. It's always great to hear from them. And a lot of unanimous votes. And I certainly would never want to be an agent of discord. But I do feel like sometimes with boards that collegiality is overemphasized. I think that it is okay for people to have different opinions and for things to be openly discussed. I know that that is not always the administration's preference. They often prefer to have things discussed and decided quietly and away from the public eye. As a former journalist, you can probably guess that I am a big fan of transparency. I've spent my teaching career teaching students to ask questions about the public's business. And so while I certainly plan to work well with others, I am also not afraid to challenge the status quo and to bring up things that are sometimes left unsaid.
Thank you, Kelly. We have time for one more question from the audience from Belinda Lum for David Sandino. Thank you.
Hi, David. Hi, Kelly. Belinda Lum, Sacramento City College. My question is really about this idea of infrastructure for our students. As you know, the LRCFT has been very strong in our support of immigrant students and immigrant faculty, both documented or undocumented, as well as those who are formerly incarcerated, food insecurity, all those issues. And so I guess my question for you is, how do you envision as a board member supporting developing an infrastructure within our colleges that can address those issues? Because right now it seemingly is very piecemeal. We use temp work, we backfill, those kind of things. So how do you envision building, how would you envision building an infrastructure to support student success in that way?
I don't know if this is fair, but if it's not, don't go there. But could you give me a background what the existing infrastructure is?
I would tell you we have undocumented resource centers, we have food distributions, we have, we're putting together a task force to help with re-emerging scholars. It takes on different forms. Like Kalinda, my colleague, actually is much more knowledgeable on that. But we tend to address these issues using temporary workers.
Yes. Okay, so I'm not an expert on the existing infrastructure, so that's why I asked your question, which I think is my approach as a board member if I were fortunate enough to have that position. I want to learn more about how these different programs operate and how can they be made better. Because I see their value. I mentioned what I fear now as a major problem for our students is this pandemic crisis. And what's that going to do in terms of students that are concerned about making rent, not having enough money, food? It's already a challenge. It's going to be worse for the next year or two. So one thing that I would propose to deal with this is that this needs to be front and center in terms of board agenda items. And to the extent board members have influence on what the agenda item would be, I would advocate for that. And maybe it's just a check and a report on how these programs are doing. It may be beyond that. It may be actually an agendized item where we can discuss it. Maybe folks like yourself can make a presentation and educate us and try to come with some ideas. Your suggestion that the existing infrastructure is not permanent and not maybe fully distributed among the four schools, okay, that seems to me as a problem that should be addressed and considered. Maybe there's a way to prioritize funding to address this. Maybe there's some help that we could get outside of the community, outside of the college community that could address with this. I'm not sure. But I would be interested in this as an issue if I were fortunate enough to be selected to the position. And I'd like to circle back with you and talk about it more. Thank you.
I guess I have two parts to my answer. One is that I think that with our big hearts, we try to solve a lot of problems in education that are not necessarily ones that we can solve or that we're best prepared to solve. And I'll give you one example. I donate frequently to my local food pantry that's on the campus of UC Davis. It's just a short walk away. The Davis Center opened up a food pantry as well. And I was talking with a faculty member actually, who mentioned to me how much more effective, especially now that we're in the middle of a pandemic, it would be to sign up students for, for SNAP benefits. And so that there is a long-term solution to their poverty, to food inequities, et cetera. And so I think that's one of the things that we need to look at is, are there partnerships that we can make that provide better services, and I'm talking about, off-campus types of services to assist students. On the other hand, I think there are some things that we do such a good job with, and I don't know if I've mentioned it or not, but our family includes a DACA student who we became legal guardians to in 2017. She was also a former foster youth. And so I've watched the UCD, both the Undocumented Center and the foster program, scoop in with, really wraparound services to make sure that she succeeds in every aspect of her education. And I spent some time listening in on Sac City, the Undocumented Center there, and their honest, empathetic conversations and hand-holding with our undocumented students, as they awaited Supreme Court decision on DACA. And so those programs have my full support. I think I mentioned before that I think one of the most important things we can do is on the programs that address our basic mission, staffing them with full-time staff so that those programs have continuity and so that they're not subject to cuts. When we're in problems with education funding right now, it's it's unfairly and horribly, it's our part-time faculty and staff who are bearing the brunt of it, and that's having a great effect on our support services, our student services. And so our staffing levels and who is full-time, shows where our values are. And if we are truly valuing opportunities to close the achievement or the opportunity gap, that's one way we can show it, by putting full-time staff in those positions.
Thank you, Kelly Wilkerson and David Sandino, for your thoughts this evening. You're definitely welcome to stick around while we interview candidates for Area 7. So we'll transition now to Area 7. Our candidates are Tammy Nelson and Scott Schmidt. We would like to begin with introductions, first from Scott Schmidt. Thank you.
Thank you, Jason. Hello, everyone. I really want to thank everyone for allowing me the opportunity to speak on behalf of the union here. And I do want to mention that I think teachers are very important. They are the most important aspect of the whole system as a whole. Actually, it's in my platform as one of the top 3 platform planks I'm really trying to push for, because right now, during the COVID-19 devastation and outbreak, state funding will dry up. It's eventual. And there will be furloughs, there will be a lot of salary cuts. Recently, SEIU 1000 cut all state employees 10% across the board. I mean, just randomly. So it's not as though that can't happen to everyone else who's in the Los Rios district, and I really want to avoid that to happen altogether. And I want to mention about me a little bit. My name is Scott Schmidt. I am a graduate student at Chico State in public administration. My bachelor's degree was in public administration as well. And I actually have a very good knowledge about how public administration works as a whole, as compared to the other candidates. Not to say they're bad or good or anything else. I actually have the formal education and background to actually be able to know how a public administration operates, how we can find ways to move around the budget, deal with the stakeholders and everything else. Now, as mentioned earlier by Belinda, student homelessness is a huge issue. Actually, that's what I mentioned in the questionnaire that was sent to me, and even in my ballot statement right now, 19% of community college students right now are actually considered homeless. That's a huge amount of students. And I don't think there's enough services to go around to help them at all. We need to do more in general. Providing a safe parking lot at minimum is a better job than doing nothing. A lot of people are sleeping in their cars even before COVID-19. And now that COVID-19 has come, there's not really anywhere to go beyond that. And lastly, I want to mention, I want to fight all tuition raises that will happen if state funding does get cut. I'm there with the students. I want to be a voice for the students and the teachers collectively. And if there's going to be any cuts anywhere, it's going to be at those who have high executive and administrative salaries before it's any workers. I just want to make that clear. I am not against those who make a lot of money, but I don't think those who make very little or even below $100,000 should have any cuts or any furloughs whatsoever. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. Tammy.
All right, so my name is Tammy Nelson, and I am currently a trustee on the Los Rios Community College District Board, as well as a full-time teacher in the Elk Grove Unified School District. So I understand what you're going through as far as the hard work. I've lived in the community about 18 years with my husband, my 2 kids, and my pet. And the reason I ran 4 years ago is because I wanted to advocate for my students. I wanted to be a good role model for them. So like my students and many of our district's community college students, I did immigrate to the United States when I was young. English was my second language. I was the first in my family to attend and graduate college. But even though my parents didn't get a formal education, they knew the importance of school and the doors that education could open. My community college experience started when I was in high school through the dual enrollment program. And it gave me the motivation to continue. So I do know how important that program is. Since then, I've gotten my credentials. I've gotten my teaching credential, my community college faculty certificate, as well as my administrative credential. And I do believe that to be a good trustee, you need to be open-minded, you need to work well with others. And I believe I do have the experience to do the job well. I'd like to serve my community, and I promise to speak out against injustice and to fight for equity.
Thank you, Tammy. Our first question will be for Tammy.
Okay. You remind me of what the question
Thanks, Jason. Was. Sorry, I will repeat it. Sorry, I just had to find find the mute button. I mean the unmute button, as it were. So the first question here is, what is your position on the importance of achieving equity among faculty? Keywords being equity among faculty. Thank you.
Okay, so you need strong participation in governance. It needs to be built on trust. It needs to be built on communication. It needs to have representatives from different constituency groups. We need open discussion, timely decision making. I know the ratio of full-time to part-time is 75 to 25. You know, it is important that everybody be adequately represented. The part-time often work directly in their fields, so they have that job experience, which is really important as well. They're usually more diverse. So I see them as being really important in making sure that their needs are being represented. They're the ones with COVID that are feeling this the hardest. So I do believe that, you know, we need to fight for them as well. They need to be heard. Within campuses and services, we need to make sure all the campuses are getting the services that they need. Programs are not getting cut, and everything we're doing is benefiting the students.
Thank you, Tammy. Scott.
Thank you. In terms of equity, I think that the biggest issue is we need to start the hiring aspect. A lot of communities never get that fair shake to be able to get hired at all. And we need to not only look at who has the most money to have the most prestigious schools, who has the most ability to obtain certain achievements, and actually look at what they've faced as a whole. I mean, a lot of the district within District 7 does cover South Sacramento, which isn't exactly a affluent area. And a lot of people in that area, I'm sure, are great teachers. They'd be great staff in general, great workers. And I want to be able to broaden the views of Los Rios and actually bring in more people who are not just traditionally, you know, affluent or unable to achieve things. On top of that, I want to mention that I think that the wages also matter. I think a lot of teachers need to have fair living wages. And a lot of them, especially if you're an adjunct or a temporary teacher, they just don't have the means to be able to afford day to day, especially with the cost of living being so high nowadays. So that twofold issue would be simply change the way the hiring takes place, find a way to not only look at how someone has come through a prestigious school or anything else, and also be able to make sure they have a fair wage to live by and actually be able to afford the cost of living throughout our current climate, which is insanely expensive, especially for me as a student. It's not easy to get rent. A lot of people that I know personally who are students, or at least have graduated and acquired degrees, half of them work minimum wage jobs or low paid jobs, and they just can't afford anything. So equity needs to be all around, not just a one single issue. Thanks.
Thank you, Scott. I'll ask the second question, and we'll begin with Tammy. What is your philosophy and experience?
We got to switch the order.
Oh, I'm sorry. You want to stay with Scott? Okay. Scott, for you, what is your philosophy and experience in working with collective bargaining groups, particularly in higher education?
Admittingly, I have only formal education in terms of collective bargaining. I've done a lot of labor law formal lessons in terms of that. Informally, I have very little. Admittingly, however, I'm willing to learn. I am very pro-worker in general, and I believe that we need to come together and find a way to make it more equitable again for the workers. And I'm 100% there for anyone who needs help or needs to talk to me or anything else in terms of it, or educate me.
Thank you. Tammy, philosophy and experience in working with collective bargaining groups, particularly in higher education.
Sure. So the background about me, I am a teacher and I have been a union representative with the Elk Grove Educators Association for almost as long as I have been teaching. So unions are really important to me. As far as higher education, I've been working with all the collective bargaining groups for the past 4 years. I do believe our district has a really strong relationships with our groups, and that's why we're able to affect change. I have always advocated for faculty. Being a teacher, I have that teacher perspective. I know what you're all going through. I know how hard you're working. I know the extra hours you're putting in, especially with the online education. So I fully believe everything you're doing, you should get compensated for. Everything should be fair as far as the time, the hours, the conditions that you're working. So I'm always willing to fight for you. And being the only teacher on the board, I believe that gives me a good perspective to know what you're going through. So I'd like to continue that positive relationship, and I hope you feel anytime that there's ever a concern or a problem that you're not afraid to reach out so we can talk about it.
Thank you, Tammy. Our third question will also be asked of you, Tammy, to start with. Gabrielle?
Thank you, Tammy and Scott. What do you see as necessary to address and remedy student achievement gaps in Los Rios?
So right now, there's a lot of things that we can be doing. It's a very tough time with COVID. For me, I've been really vocal about digital equity and closing the digital equity gap. You know, we were able to get our students the Chromebooks, we got them hotspots, but there's still other issues that go along with that, right? Like not being able to know how to use the technology, being trained on that, or not being able to find quiet places to work in your house when you have everybody that's home with you. You have your kids there with you. You got to find childcare for them. You know, our students are mostly part-time students. They're the ones that are feeling things the most with COVID as far as things go. I want to make sure we are focusing on our housing and food insecure students. I've been very active with that as well. I've been looking at how we can expand those programs. With our housing, we don't have students sleeping in the parking lots. We do have hotel vouchers. So we've gone a step further. I wouldn't want any of our students sleeping in parking lots. I don't believe that's safe. So we've been working with the Sacramento Housing Authority for that. So we're really working. We're really trying to see what we can do as far as connecting with nonprofits and agencies, applying for grants. I think we need to make sure, my personal belief is that we need to keep full funding of all the programs that help our neediest students. So our, you know, our DSPS programs, our Emoja, our MESA, our English language programs, all of those things that we know that help students, that are proven to help students, we cannot take funding away from that, and I'm strongly advocating that. We need to make sure our mental health programs are really strong. That's another big issue with COVID. And then it was mentioned earlier, but I also agree that with dual enrollment, we do need to get, students in community college earlier. And, you know, South Sacramento, I work there. Those are my students. Those are the students that are coming from foster homes. I have homeless students. I know exactly what they're going through. I've helped them fill out college applications. I've helped them with scholarships. So I would love to get a program in there so they can get started with community college, because once they get started, they're more likely to stay in community college. And then, you know, we can get them to stay in the community, right? They can go to law enforcement. They know the community. They can teach in the community. So they know everything that the community is going through. They can advocate for the community. The students can feel safe going to them if there's a problem. They understand. They're from that area. So I can't speak for them, but I can help them, and I can do what I can to make those changes. So that's what I'm fighting for.
Thank you, Tammy. Scott, the same question. What do you see as necessary to address and remedy student achievement gaps in Los Rios?
Thank you. So right now, as a student, I have a lot of friends who do work not very good jobs. I know a lot of people who went to community college and also don't know where they're going. A lot of them are waiters, waiters, cashiers, stuff like that. Not to say they're bad jobs, they're not. The issue is, though, they don't pay enough, and that's the biggest problem. I think that the best way we could find a way to close these gaps is allow there to be more trade schools, allow there to be more trade programs, bring in the unions that actually potentially have more connections to learn these trades, these apprenticeships, to be electricians or plumbers or anything like that, because they not only will teach our students, but also be able to give them real good paying jobs that will last a long time. We'll have local jobs created. And that's the purpose of going to school. A lot of people go because they think it's going to make me have a career one day. Well, unfortunately, that dream is no longer in existence. The only way you can get a good job now is you have a master's degree or a doctorate. If you have a bachelor's degree, it's not enough. I know a lot of people who have a bachelor's degree today who are working as waiters. And actually, I've seen, surprisingly, some high-end restaurants that require a bachelor's degree. So the whole purpose, again, of going to school is to get a job for most people. I don't want them to be saddled with high debt, to be miserable, to be delinquent on their debt in the long run. I want them to get real jobs that are sustainable, local, and create tax dollars. So we need to find a way to broaden our scopes, to bring in unions from around the area, bring in more trade programs, and actually give them real jobs. And I believe I heard Tammy mention about the what I talked about in terms of the parking lots. There's way too many people on the streets in general that have nowhere to go. Vouchers are not enough because there is not enough vouchers. A lot of students are too embarrassed to even request them. They'd rather sleep in their cars than be concerned with being chased by whoever's going to chase them. At least a lot of them feel concerned they might get chased by someone, especially if they're underage or they're living with their parents still and they can't afford to be somewhere. It's just a whole slew of issues. So I want to be able to have Los Rios be that great institution that not only house these students if we have to. I don't think we should, but if we're able to, why not? And also be able to get them real jobs that can generate real tax dollars in the local area.
Thank you, Scott. We have time for a couple questions. Our previous questions from Belinda and Kalinda, we'd like to revisit those with our two candidates. Kalinda, can you ask your question again?
I can try, but I didn't write it down, so we'll see how well I do. Thank you, everyone all of the candidates that came tonight. The question I asked before was about, in my observation of the board meetings, I perceive that there is potentially some people who have more power than others, and that there's not necessarily a challenge to that power, and therefore not necessarily a challenge to the status quo, which, well, I don't want to go too far into this, but which primarily relates to attaching Los Rios strongly to the state chancellor's policies. And so what I'm wondering is how comfortable each of the candidates are at challenging the power structure that exists on the board now, especially as it relates to offering divergent opinions.
Should I go first?
Yeah, that sounds good, Scott. Thank you.
Perfect. So as an outsider, I'm currently not the incumbent. I'm a very opinionated person. I don't know if you've noticed it from the way I've talked so far. I think it should be one vote, one voice, one vote on the board. And if I don't agree with the opinion, if I think it's going to be against workers, if I think it's going to be bad for students, if I think it's not a good proactive step towards economic solvency, I will deny it, and I will raise a fit. I'm not a person to take things lightly, and I fight. That's who I am. I'm a fighter. And I think personally the board took not the best steps towards supporting a measure, which was Measure E, I believe, for increasing property taxes to fund infrastructure. There has been a massive amount of enrollments have been lost through data. It's since 2013. And not to mention, COVID-19 was already coming. A lot of people saw it coming. So we're going to be funding all these classrooms when we have all this online instruction. And at the same time, we're also going to have potential furloughs and wage cuts. I mean, it's just a collection of way too many issues. And I'm a proactive person. I saw it coming a mile away. And I think we should find ways to not only keep the budget solvent, to fight for workers, and to help students have good outcomes. So I will be that fighter for all of you on the board and for the Los Rios district. And I really appreciate, again, your question. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. Tammy.
So my opinion is we're different people, right? And we act in different ways. So some of us are more vocal than others, but that doesn't mean that we don't have the same amount of power. We can at any point say what we want. We can disagree if we disagree. We are transparent, but there is some behind the scenes as far as if I have a question, I might email, I might try to find out more information ahead of time about the issue. So, so I'm making a good decision. Every decision I make is going to be for the benefit of the students. That's my number one priority. I'm never going to vote for anything that I don't agree with and that I don't think is going to benefit for the students. I do believe it is important for the board to get along, not necessarily vote the same way, but we need to have a good relationship. We need to be open-minded. We need to be willing to listen to each other and not have our minds made up before the meeting. Because the meeting is where we're going to talk about everything and kind of hash it all out. In order for anything to pass, it needs to have half the board has to agree to it. So you definitely can voice your opinion if you want to be that person. But again, I think it has been helpful that we've been on the same page for most things, because I think what we've been fighting for, it's been good. We've been fighting, right, for racial diversity. We've been voting to make changes, necessary changes to our police force. give our students money. Everything we're doing, I do believe it's beneficial, but if there was something that I did not think was beneficial, I would definitely speak my mind.
Thank you, Tammy. Belinda, can you direct your question to Tammy?
So like Kalinda, I didn't write it down, so you might get a slightly different version of this, but the LRCFT has a very strong record on social justice and supporting student needs, everything from our work with undocumented students, work with immigrant students, food insecurity, formerly incarcerated, et cetera. But my concern is really about how do we support infrastructure? Sorry.
Ooh, you're good.
So how do you see helping that? And my deep concern is that we tend to staff this work with temporary workers.
Yeah, so I don't think the temporary workers is a good thing. I think we need, full-time staff. I know that changes have been made recently to have things more centralized, like a centralized call center that people can use. I do believe things should be centralized. It'll be more efficient that way. We're not going to be repeating things. But then we get in that sticky position of autonomy, right? Of every college has their own culture. And it's, they are very different colleges. So I do think it's a fine line. But I do think we should be centralizing things as far as the resources, like the food and housing insecurity that's going on. Right, every college has their pantry, but we could be doing more. The housing that's going on, that's been something that I've brought up over and over again. I would love to get on-campus housing at some point. I'm told it's not in the budget, but maybe down the road it will be. I do believe that's very important. Like Scott mentioned with the parking lots, I was in favor of that. I was cool with that. But again, I believe we could do more than that. So I would like to get something in place for all of our housing insecure students. We do have the student emergency fund that students can use, so if they are kicked out from one day to the next, we can provide them with money to pay their rent. But again, it's just a Band-Aid for long-term solutions. So I agree that we need to be doing more in the community to be fixing those things. I'm trying to think what else. I don't know. Yeah, I agree. Like the renting out the gowns for grads, having showers for homeless students. Again, we need to do more. They're Band-Aids.
Thank you, Tammy. Scott.
Belinda, and I appreciate your question. And as I've mentioned previously several times, I do think that we need to do more provide more services in general. And there just simply is not enough. A lot of our leaders will vote the line in sessions. They will go with the status quo, and they'll go to sleep at night, not worry about it because it doesn't impact them directly. As a student myself, seeing it firsthand, it bothers me. I have helped a lot of people who have fed the homeless in public. I've helped people clean up the trash at the trails by the river. I'm really all about finding ways to be a good citizen, or rather a good neighbor to help out those who need help. And our students definitely should be the priority, and then the budget. Our students are just not getting enough tools to do these things. And what I found interesting too is, correct me if I'm wrong, Tammy, you said the parking lots were a bad idea, and then you said they were a good idea. So I will need some clarification on that later. But we just need to have people with good ideas being proactive, not reactive, which we've been suffering from all along. A lot of our leaders right now, they'll simply go along, have a good day, and then once things get progressively worse, they get reactive. We need real leaders that can see down the line, see what needs to be put in place, what makes the most fiscal sense, and let's get it done. I'm a doer. I don't want to wait around. I want to be able to get things done so we can avoid all these issues. Homelessness will continue to climb with COVID-19, that's a guarantee. And if we don't put the right infrastructure in today, it will get progressively worse, no doubt about it. So I would appreciate everyone on the board to follow suit with what I believe in, which is we need to find a way to work today, really brainstorm and really get something down on paper to get things ready to go. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. We have time for one more question. This one from Jenny Gray from the Elk Grove Tribune. And this question will be directed to you, Scott.
Okay.
Hello, everyone. My question has to do with how do you know if your policies and goals are being carried out as a trustee member? How do you go about making sure that what you're deciding upon is actually happening? Do you have plans to take student feedback? What's your goals there? How are you going to connect?
I'm 100% about not only getting feedback from those who are workers, those who are staff and teachers, but also from those in the community and from students. I think it's a multifaceted issue, especially in terms of homelessness or any kind of services provided. We need to be able to reach into all assets and see what can be done. Maybe that we can have a collective or collaborative thing put in place. So for instance, Wilton, a lot of the rural areas have tons of space. For all we know, we can create a little satellite campus that can provide all these amenities. We can have housing potentially. We could have a food pantry that's even more, bigger than it is, and which can not only help those who are students and workers who are hurting, but also provide those in the community that they're helping, because Los Rios district is, by definition, the community. We represent everything within it, and we should be the guiding star to really improving the whole district and the community at large.
Thank you, Scott. Tammy.
So as far as board self-evaluation, we do have a once-a-year board retreat in October, and we go over goals that we set for ourselves, and we see how close we are to meeting those goals. I agree that we are #1 community, right? That's who we're serving. So I love community feedback. I'm always open to people letting me know any concerns. I can give out my cell phone number and my email, have conversations with the public. Regarding the first week of school even, I asked, students that I knew, teachers that I knew, how did the week go for you, right? I wanted to know if there were any problems, and if there were problems, what could we do to fix them? Generally I heard it went pretty well. There were a few things, right? Not there wasn't 100% perfect. But once I heard those things, then I brought it up, to a higher level to see, well, here's a suggestion. Can we do this? Can we do that? So I'm all for change. If we hear things that need change, I want to work to make it happen.
Thank you, Tammy. We do have time for the Area 4 candidates to address this past question. David Sandino, would you like to address the question?
Could you please repeat the question?
Sure. Jenny, would you mind repeating it?
Sure. What I'm looking to find out is, how does the board connect with the students in the community to know if the board's goals and policies are being accomplished and carried out?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's a key part, I think, of a board position, is actually track success and trying to know whatever policies and programs are being implemented are actually working. That's the whole goal, I think, that everybody's sharing to make things better. There's been a movement, I think, in colleges to track success through mathematical metrics, actual graduation rates, transfers to college, etc. I think that's part of the story, and I think that information can be valuable, but that shouldn't be the whole story. Because there's so many benefits that can't be measured in with that kind of quantitative measurement. So I think it's important, and that's part of my personality, is to get engaged, hear from the different constituents that are involved in any of the Los Rios programs, whether it's students, faculty, I think administrative staff, incredibly important, community members, businesses, for instance, and task force that help with career education, legislature, others that are an important part of the Los Rios community need to be consulted with and talked. So I also think it's good to ask questions, not to just take opinions at face value. If somebody has a negative opinion, for instance, I want to know why. Please explain it. Can you show me? I want to see it. I think another important part of being a board member to address this is to be active and travel and see with your own eyes. And I'm committed to that. I'm somebody who's a doer, and I would make an effort to visit not just the 4 major campuses, but the satellite campus. Talk to the folks that are actually there on the day-to-day. Maybe sit in a class. Maybe have a coffee with one of the administrators or the faculty. All these are ways, I think, to gather information and try to make judgments. I'm also put a lot of value in thoughtful written analysis. I mean, if we have something that's important to consider and to deal with, I want to see it in writing. I need to have that evaluation in writing, because that's the kind of thought process that I think leads to best results. So if we have some question about whether a program is actually working, I'd want somebody to analyze it for me and bring that to the board. We'd have an open discussion with the board, all the stakeholders, and then we can make some good judgments. I will say, given the enormous size and responsibility of Los Rios, this would be a never-ending job. I think it's very difficult to keep on top of everything to make sure they're going well. So that's why we need everybody, voices, to come forward, and if they see something that's not working, to go ahead and let the board or let others know, so that way we can get our attention.
Thank you, David. Kelly.
Yeah, I think if you want to know how I would act as trustee, I think you need to look at the way I've campaigned. And I have talked to the academic senate leads and CFT leads at both Sac City and Cosumnes River. Sac City, because the West Sac Center and the Davis Center are, both feed into that campus. As I mentioned before, I've talked to at least 50 faculty and staff members, sat in on many of the virtual orientations that have been offered to students, so that I can see it from a student's point of view. To me, it's really important not just to be receptive, kind of a passive, if you reach out to me, I'll listen, but to also be an active participant who reaches out to you and demonstrates that I'm listening and that I want to learn more about your program and your perspective. One example of that is I've accepted an invitation from SEIU 1021, to do a job shadow for a day. And I think that's going to be especially important when we're talking about returning to in-person instruction. Of course, those workers are the ones who are really going to be our frontline workers, sanitizing classrooms and labs and, and workshops. So being an active presence on our campuses and also in our high schools. And so, I have a special place in my heart as a high school teacher myself, and I'm planning on visiting every high school in my area and making a connection. Kind of as a side note, this trustee position, which includes Davis and West Sacramento, in addition to the western part of Elk Grove, sits on the Yolo County School Boards Association, and yet the trustee has never been active on that school boards association. And that's a missed opportunity for collaboration and for community input that I'm eager to correct.
Thank you, Kelly. I want to thank all of our participants tonight for answering our questions, and our chair of our PAC will close out the meeting tonight. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. Just wanted to end it by letting everybody know what's going on and thanking everybody for showing up. I think we peaked out at about 25 people, and that's great for a first-time event. this is being recorded, and the overnight probably will be when we will get a full recording. And we're going to send copies of this recording to the different candidates. And it will also be archived at our website, the Los Rios College Federation of Teachers website. And our plan is to take a short break, a little bio break, and all the PAC members will be reconvening at about 6:30 for a short meeting on these races. No other items are on that agenda. The PAC members were sent twice the questionnaires that the candidates filled out, and our hope is that we'll make a decision tonight and be announcing, sharing that with the candidates over the next 24 hours. That's the basic plan. And so with that, I want to thank everybody. Unless anybody's got any last minute stuff, we're going to end it now. Everybody good?
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks very much, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
So much.
Yeah, thank you.
To those